Hi, it's Joe Morgan with the Tech Leader Spotlight podcast, where we interview tech leaders to learn about their journey and leadership lessons learned along the way. This show is brought to you by the Tech Professional Money Operating System, where we help tech professionals who know they're doing well financially, but aren't sure that they're optimizing everything in just the right way. We help you invest cash wisely, make the most of stock awards, minimize your tax bill, and create clarity and confidence so you can spend less time thinking about your money and more time living the life you want. If you'd like more information, look me up on LinkedIn. That's Joe Morgan at Best Financial Life. I'm very excited today to have Jon Temple on the podcast, who's a design principal at IBM and an experienced leader who specializes in UX research and design with deep experience in web, mobile, and AI. Welcome to the podcast, Jon.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So, UX research and design with deep experience in web, mobile, and AI. Tell me what all of that means to you.
All right. There is the field of design and user experience design in particular. So design, of course, most people are aware, they do clothing or they design cars and so forth. User experience, instead of having people who are just from a art background, you have people from other fields altogether. So for example, I have a doctorate in cognitive psychology. And so what I bring to the table is an understanding of human information processing limitations, of people's cognitive capabilities. And I take design principles and kind of hook these things together so that what I end up creating when I do the design work, I create something that is engaging and actually meets user needs because I'm talking to the users, I'm watching the users, I'm observing the users and trying to figure out what they actually require. So that's what that ultimately means. That's what that field means. And what I mentioned, the deep experience, and thank you for emphasizing that because I think that's very important, is no matter what the particular platform is, the same design principles, the same human factors principles, that's a term I'll use throughout this whole thing, is human factors. Those will remain the same regardless of what area essentially you're applying it to. So whether it's web, which 20 years ago, that was like, wow, this is new, this is different. Remember NCA Mosaic, And
Yeah,
then it was suddenly mobile, and everybody had to have a mobile device, and that was like the thing that should have shook our lives. And of course, there's my children. They never don't remember any other time when they weren't holding
right.
somebody's hand that they're talking to. And now, of course, the big shift is AI. The thing is, though, user experience and the importance of it remains the same. The challenges are the same because people are still the same
Mm.
now as they were 20 years ago, frankly, as they were 2000 years ago. We are the same. What's changed is the technology and thus our relationship to that technology.
Yeah, it's so true. One of my I won't say favorite books, but one of the most influential books I've read was I'm sure you know it is Influence by Robert Cialdini.
Mhm.
And that was written in what, 1973, 76, something
Right.
like that. But
Yep.
you read that today and it's just, it all just makes sense and it's still there.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I love the emphasis on user design because I'm not a programmer, I'm not in tech, and so I'm a user only.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, user design has improved greatly over those 20 years for sure.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
They really have. And unfortunately, I would say that every sort of generation of technology is sort of still in play. So there are internal systems out there developed by, I don't want to mention the companies responsible for them, but they still sell technology or interfaces that were they designed back in the 80s. And people run their entire businesses on essentially on 80s era user interface principles,
Yeah.
quite dated by today's standards. And then they'll do things to revise them to make them more user friendly, but they're always tend to be about 15 years behind the rest of the industry. So
Yeah.
the irony is all these, no matter what the technology is, there's generations of it being used in parallel, sometimes by the same people. So you're kind of at work, you might be using one sort of technology that has certain standards to it, and then go home and then pick up something you just bought, which is eons much better and refined than what you were just using earlier that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, in the financial industry, a lot of the financial technology is way behind in terms of
Yeah.
uh, just the languages that they use and certainly the interface. So,
Yeah, I was
but it is getting better.
surprised to find how much the financial industry is still done on just paper.
Yeah,
Whereas at home, I'm a consumer banking, I can click a couple buttons and things just sort of happen.
yeah.
And but then if I want to, work with a certain bank or a mortgage company or something like that, oh no, it has to be paper. And then they talk about fax machines, and my kids go, "What's that again?"
For sure.
So yeah,
Yeah. Well, with your experience, I'm excited to get your thoughts on our first question that we typically ask, which is,
sure.
what does leadership in the tech space mean to you?
Mhm. So, leadership in tech is not repeating back what the leaders expect to hear. That
Mm,
is not leadership. And that's to say there are various roles, each of which have a leadership kind of role. So you have, of course, you have your CEO at the top, and he sort of, or she will direct, what everyone should be working on. But if you're just basically parroting back what that person wants, you are not actually leading. What you should be doing is identifying within the purview of what your expertise is, what they should be doing to help make that business successful, right? So if you are in user experience, you're in design, then you should be trying to recommend what is necessary for that technology, for that your approach, for your the experience of the users to make that company successful. That sets their product apart from that of the competition, essentially. If you aren't doing that and you're just parroting back what they want, you're basically a follower.
mm,
You're not leading. Ironically, I think the last several years there's been a big push to have more compliance. That seems to be very desirable.
mm,
But I do think this is a cyclical thing, and eventually they're going to realize being told back things they already know or they think they know, because the reality is they don't know them. They're just basically haven't reflected back, right? That is not going to help give them a competitive advantage. What gives them a competitive advantage is being told things they need to know in order to be successful in whatever the domain is that they need to be
mm.
competing in.
And I think I know what you're going to say to this, but well, first off,
Yeah.
let me just say, not repeating back what leaders expect to hear. We
Yes.
haven't had that answer yet on the podcast, so that's super interesting.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but one thing that comes to mind is, and one of the things I love about the tech industry
Mhm.
is all the collaboration and all of the
Mhm.
teamwork and all of that.
Yep.
So how does collaboration fit in with what
Yeah.
you're talking about here?
Yeah, is really, really key. When I've been on projects where I've been responsible for having full ownership of the vision, the full direction, the full strategy, it's very exciting to me because I feel like I can do whatever I want. But you know what? It's not necessarily the best thing because
Mm,
then you don't get the buy-in from everybody who's actually doing the real work.
yeah.
They need to build what you envision. And unless they actually feel committed to it, like they have a piece of it, they contributed to it, you've lost them. And you may not get a solution that's going to really be as good as it could be. So collaboration is really key, particularly what I would call cross-functional. Cross-functional
Mm,
being, your development team, your stakeholders, the anybody who might be associated with that solution they need to feel like they have a say and a stake in it. Even if their ideas aren't great, it doesn't matter. You
mm,
still need for them to have ownership. If they have that feeling and they feel like that they have a like I said a stake. I can repeat it again there.
mm,
Then you're going to get ultimately a much better product out of it. So collaboration is absolutely key. Plus, when you need to go against you have a stakeholder that is like kind of holds the purse strings and you need to sort of um get a little bit out of them, squeeze some
mhm,
of that out of that mixing metaphors there.
yeah,
It really helps if you have a great team who trust you and who value your insights because they'll have your back because
yeah.
they know you'll have their back. And so as you go forward, you have architects and you have developers who will arm you with how feasible it is to build it. They'll give you those estimates willingly. You don't have to basically wrestle it out of them. You'll have other designers or researchers, for example, who will arm you with the facts you might need for that vision and so forth, you know. And then you can come forward unified with that group in order to tackle the really, really tough things. And that's only possible because of those relationships of trust that you build upon and you know and by directing that you can actually have a much, much better outcome.
Yeah, terrific. Um, let's move forward with the next area that we normally discuss. So there's all these
Mhm.
challenges in the job
Yep,
market today, still layoffs going
yep,
on.
yep.
What would you recommend for people to create resiliency for themselves?
Yeah, so it's a very, very tough market right now. It's definitely the toughest that I've seen since certainly I think it's been compared a lot to 2008, 2009, the financial meltdown then. So it's very similar. The economy itself doesn't seem to reflect that underlying reality it is for people, particularly in tech and in a lot of white collar work. And so the thing that you're going to hear most is make sure you have an understanding of AI and AI principles because there's a
Yeah,
lot of people attributing this all to AI. And there's a little bit of truth to it, but unfortunately it's overstated. Um, it is important to have your skills up to date and understand what the technology is, how to leverage it, and so forth. But I would say that's true of every generation of technology. This, in a sense, is no different than that. What is important though is to be aware that that AI is not going to right at this point. If you don't have those skills, you will be selected out of the market.
mm,
If you do have them, it won't necessarily select you in
right.
because there's going to be a lot of people with the exact same skills. So it becomes part of the assumption of your skill set that you have it. It isn't unfortunately going to be a key differentiator. But if you don't have them, you are out of that running.
Mm,
Um, a lot of what I see going on right now with the job market is, for the most part, I think it's a lot of investment in AI. That
mm,
it's not necessarily replacing work, except in small, very controlled areas. Like there's some writing that's being done very effectively, I think, with AI, but you still need somebody at the helm. But and even there's a lot of some cases like IT support, like you go to a chatbot to help you with that. But the only reason they could replace those jobs is because they're not controlling for a level of quality, right?
mm,
So if you're not actually measuring quality of outcome, how good that IT support chatbot is, and whether it actually solved real problems, then you can say, I replaced them. But did you? And
right.
the fact is, yes, in a sense, they were replaced because they laid off, say, the entire help desk staff, but they weren't necessarily replaced. What you really have is a
Yeah.
cut to service, a cut to service quality. And that's not the same as I replaced somebody like one person with another person who's equally good or someone who's better. You've done it, you've just cut what you're going to deliver to your customers. And that's not the same thing. But there's a lot of investment in AI going on. And I think that a lot of people are talking about this driving the market to a very significant extent. A lot of the investment into NVIDIA, for example, and things are kind of going quite high. But it isn't necessarily because AI is replacing jobs per se.
Mm,
It's sort of an indirect effect of kind of what's going on with AI. So in terms
yeah.
of what you can prepare, like I said, definitely be familiar with it, but keep in mind just having those skills isn't going to suddenly make you instantly desirable, like you suddenly are coated in AI pheromones,
That's
It's
right.
not going to happen. It's not going to happen because the competition is very aggressive right now.
Yeah. So you have to learn to work with AI. You have to learn to use it.
Yep.
But that's just the starting point. So what
Yeah.
are some things that people can do to really differentiate themselves, just generally speaking?
I think what's going to be really going to matter a lot is probably soft skills moving forward.
Mm,
So we used to like to make a lot of fun of liberal arts majors, for example. Oh, they're never getting any jobs. I was
I guess
actually
I'm guilty of that a little
I was a
bit.
liberal arts major as an undergraduate, and I actually love the liberal arts, and I feel vindicated.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
good.
even though I did go into STEM, and I have a PhD, so in a science, I am sort of I love history and humanities and philosophy, and I can probably teach almost any of those topics. And I have actually from time to time taught them at college level. But that is going to be important as you move forward, particularly things like storytelling, being able
Hmm.
to talk about the value in a way that's going to be better than what you can generate with a prompt, right? Because it will generate something. It'll always generate something very quickly, AI, but it has a sort of sameness to it, right? It's almost a monotony, right?
Mhm.
And that when that starts to become normalized with, as is already happening so rapidly, you're not going to stand out if
Mhm.
basically everything you seem like it was scripted for a CW teen drama, right?
Yeah.
Very formal, or a Hallmark, they pick on Hallmark, very formulaic, where it's like, oh, I think I've seen that before, because you have. It was basically a bunch of generic stuff that was put together. So if you can tell stories and you can talk about value in a way that stands out above this boilerplate kind of stuff, that's going to give you the competitive advantage in the world of the future. So anyway, that is basically my take on what will matter ultimately, and take it or leave it.
Yeah. So you mentioned storytelling, and I think of
Yes.
it as like human connection. Like if
Right,
you can
right.
connect with humans
Mhm.
and bring the expertise and all of that in such a way that it can be accepted by your market, whether you're actually selling something or
Absolutely.
whether you're communicating internally, that's going to count for so much. And you
Mhm.
know, that's going to be a big change for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's not soft skills are not exactly what you think of when you think of techie folks.
Yes. And you do have to have all the hard skills.
Yeah,
It's makes but that's not what's going to differentiate you.
yeah,
And so that's just once again, it's kind of like AI abilities. It's assumed. That's just
yeah,
to get you so that you're part of the pool they're pulling from. But what's going to differentiate you, that's going to have you stand out, are those soft skills that go above and beyond. And kind of going back to why storytelling is important is, if you think about it, what are the elements of story? Once again, this is my liberal arts background speaking here, is the story basically, you have a kind of a run up and you build up the problem, right? And then you hit kind of a climax, and then there's a resolution, there's a conflict you hit, and then you have to resolve that problem in some fashion. There is no story without conflict, and there is no satisfactory story without resolution. So, in terms of business, this is where change happens, right? In business, positive change is you have a problem. There's some segment of the business you're trying to get into, and then you have to you kind of position that as a conflict, then that where there's a resolution, and you can show what the problem is, and you have that resolution, and you have a nice controlled, hopefully not blue sky, but something really realistic that nevertheless can be used to resolve that problem. You have a story, and it's about getting the people who control the money for them to release it so that you basically can put it toward building out that solution that's going to sort of make it all go.
yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
the good news about learning storytelling is it's been figured out how to do that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's basically a formula to it, but being able to actually do it, especially on the
Mhm.
fly, takes a lot of practice, and it's definitely a skill that you need to develop.
But it is, I would say it's core to being human, right?
That's true.
It's core to being human, and we've been doing it for thousands of years, from Homer and the Odyssey and the Iliad
Yeah.
to watching The Last of Us on HBO. So it's all about story in the end.
Yeah, there you go. Tell me, what's the most important financial decision you've made in your tech career?
The most important is quite simply maximizing contributions to a 401(k).
Hmm.
discipline. Just be disciplined. You don't have to be a brilliant investor. You basically just take it out of your paycheck. Don't think about it and do it. Don't do it till it hurts necessarily, but do it to the point where you don't think about it hurting.
Yeah.
So you put as much as you can, and then you just let that be an autopilot because you have work to do. If you're not in the financial area, you're like, I'm a user experience, I'm a design. That's what you need to be focusing on. So just have that in autopilot, have the contributions happen, and then 20, 30 years down the road, then that will help prepare you for where you need to be for the phase of your life that's post-career.
Yeah.
So I would say that is the most important thing you could possibly do. Just
And and
be careful.
so how were you able to make that decision? Because I mean we're probably around the same age and
Mhm,
I may be a little older than you, but I remember when I was starting out work, I was working with a
mhm,
financial consultant and
mhm,
we were selling 401k
mhm.
plans. And one of the
Yeah,
big selling points back then was nobody contributes to the 401k or nobody, contributes the
yeah,
max.
yeah, yeah.
And we have this great slick little
Mhm.
story basically to get your
Yeah.
employees to do that. So it wasn't very common back then, maybe more common today, but how were you able to
Well,
uh,
what is back then to you? So so how far back are we going back?
so for me
The
it's
80s,
like
90s?
no,
Yeah.
early 90s.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I would say back in the beginning, I have to say that I think the first job I had out of grad school, they did offer a 401k. It was I only had it for like a year, and they mentioned this 401k thing to me. And I'm like, why do I need that? I have Social
Yeah.
Security. I don't need that. But very quickly, I got educated and realized that this is something I need to be doing. So this opportunity I had for the next job. I definitely just started maxing it out right from the beginning. At that point, I had just recently gotten married, and we were planning to buy a house. So the budgeting was really difficult. It was
Mm,
very difficult trying to get that going. The main reason I think I started taking the 401k very seriously was mostly fear,
mm,
and having grown up fairly poor, which
mm,
was great in a way for having that liberal arts education paid for because I was able to go to a college where they gave me essentially a free ride
mm.
because as long you could get in, they paid for it.
That's great.
And absolutely fantastic. So, and I remember my father telling me, yeah, that was my plan. Yeah, right, right. Sure, sure, that was your plan.
Yeah.
Your plan was for us to be poor so that I could have a free education. Any case, what I that played out in my childhood and the things we didn't have, and especially as things like healthcare became more important and so critical of rural healthcare is I think that drove me more and more to trying to stick as much as I could into 401k and then trying to put things in Roth and basically and diversify as much as I could because I hate to say it. I mean, I love my parents. They've passed on, but they were a fantastic counterexample, like what not to do. And
Yeah.
you can learn positive things from your parents. I absolutely did. I learned great values, but I also saw things that they did that I didn't like, that
Mm,
scared the hell out of me, that I did the opposite.
mm,
And one of them was to make sure that, in my old age, I would be taken care of. And they did not. They toward the end, they basically, I think my dad basically lost all of his money in the
mm,
2008, 2009, bust
mm,
and never recovered from it.
mm,
And so my mom, I basically had to manage her meager finances, until she eventually passed away. And
mm.
I swore I would never ever have that happen to myself. So that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. That's great. Well,
That's
thanks.
there's storytelling example there for you. So
Yeah. There you go. Well, thanks so much for being so generous with your experience, John. I really
of
appreciate you
course.
being on the podcast.
Yes. Well, thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Just as a reminder, this is sponsored by the Money Operating System, where tech leaders gain clarity and control of their finances so they can live out the rest of their lives with intention.
Mhm.
If you want to know more about us, look me up on LinkedIn, Joe Morgan at Best Financial Life.